Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another special episode of Coffee and Commerce. Really excited to have our guest today, Rania Masri, the Chief Transformation Officer of Chalhoub Group. Welcome, Rania.
Hi, Zubin. Thanks for having me. Very excited.
Thank you for being here. Really excited for today. So Rania has an extensive background in retail, digital transformation. I think we're going to learn quite a lot today, regardless of kind of where your brand is. So Rania, please tell us about your background and we'll jump right in.
So my background started from the retail floor up, basically. I started working at the age of 16 in Montreal in retail from in fashion and while studying on the side. I've had experiences from a very young age through department stores, but also was very lucky to be part of the first opening of Zara in Canada in '98. And I also had the great luck of working for one of the greatest concept stores that today has a huge legacy in Montreal, which was called Juan and Juanita, for anybody that remembers this time. It was the days of Diesel and Miss 60, and that was a very, very long time ago. And then I decided to move to Dubai in 2002. For a couple of reasons. A lot of my friends from college in Montreal were talking about this Dubai, and being Middle Eastern background, I was actually very keen to come closer to the Middle East, yet I wanted a place that was as cosmopolitan and fun as my upbringing was in Montreal. And Dubai in 2002 was really, for retail, was really an exciting time because I was able to experience from 2002 to today really an unbelievable evolution of retail. And I was lucky at a very young age to start there with the development of a young brand at the time called Bershka, which was the little sister of Zara, and opened many stores here in the region, in the Middle East, and then went on to join the Chalhoub Group 14 years ago. And I started with the Chalhoub Group managing the Ralph Lauren operation across the Middle East, across all the lines, from distribution, wholesale, to opening a lot of the flagships. It was an exciting time because in 2000 and oh my God, what year was it? In 2006 was the time where Ralph Lauren was really focusing a lot on the upgrade of the brand and focusing a lot on image and lifestyle. And it was honestly an unbelievable school for me. Moving on after that, I think my most memorable time of my career was when I was given the opportunity to create with an unbelievable team at Chalhoub Group our first concept store. And when I say concept store, you would imagine a small boutique, but it was the largest shoe store in the world that we opened in Dubai Mall, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, a 9,000 square meter store dedicated to shoes at a time where it was, the beginning of social media, and we can talk about this a little bit more, but it was a really exciting time to work on a concept that was very much about community building, very much about that category that was starting to boom, and slowly get into that whole sneaker culture that was also starting to boom in the region. Had already, taken its place in Europe and in the US, but it was really starting here. Fast forward to 3 years ago, nearly 900 days ago, and we'll speak about this in a bit, I was given another unbelievable opportunity by the Chalhoub Group to start what we called our transformation mission as a group. And I ended up with the team branding it Shift. And Shift was a transformation mission to move the Chalhoub Group from what we call the traditional retailer in luxury for the Middle East to our vision, which was a hybrid retailer that was at the fingertips of customers everywhere. And that's my story.
That is incredible. Rania, so I think that it's great for everybody to hear the extensive experience you have. We have listeners that are basically starting a brand. We have ones that are already building a brand, those that have built a retail brand and now are looking at kind of going online, digital transformation, omni-channel, et cetera. Let's take a step back and look at when you first arrived in Dubai and the brands that you were working with. and focus on taking those brands into a new market. And what were some of the challenges you had? Because a lot of individuals, organizations that are trying to expand, they realize that within a certain geographic region, they can do quite well, but that, as we mentioned in our last episode with Maha, there are massive opportunities to basically go internationally. You never know when another region is going to be even more interested in your products than where you started. So can you just talk to us a little bit about kind of that localization and what needs to happen to adhere and keep your brand and yet come into a new culture and environment and be able to flourish?
I mean, that's such a great question, because honestly, personalization, even back then in 2002, when I first moved here, and the beauty of Inditex is, and fast fashion is the production cycle is very quick.
Sure.
And, we speak so much about data today and decisions that are based on data. These guys just have a whole operating system that was based on data from day one. And what was super exciting was, at that time saying, and in Zara and in Inditex in general, they work very well on basics, and if you want a basic, you'll find it in all the colors at the best price. And I remember at the time, the local culture was very much about wearing long skirts. And it really took me just one trip to the head office in Barcelona and say, guys, you know what, they're looking for this skirt. And I promise you, in a month's time, I had it in all the colors, all the sizes that I needed, and it became a bestseller. And that was not an opportunity only given to what my role was, a brand manager at the time. Store managers have the ability to have that impact. What I love about that, and again, I don't want to just tout my horn, but I love the fact that I was on the floor, because today, one of the main things that we talk about at the executive committee at Chalhoub is the frontliners are king, because they're the ones that understand first and foremost what the customer is looking for. And it's very important that organizations that are based in the US, that are based in Brazil, that are based in Europe understand that and really want to know what is unique about the customers. Now, today we're lucky because most of the organizations, at least big ones, are investing in platforms and data, and they can see this wherever they are to a certain extent. However, at a time when we started here, and I think I faced this a lot with Ralph Lauren, where the Upper East Side style was not the style of Dubai at that time.
Sure.
So it was important to really listen and to evolve from a product point of view, but communication point of view as well.
So two thoughts come to mind. That's incredible. So just to reiterate, you were able to go to Barcelona, to the Zara head office, explain to them that you needed long dresses in this style, this color, etc. And they were able to produce those and have those on the shelf in 30 days.
Yes, absolutely.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And that's in 2002, where nobody really spoke about personalization and localization back then.
Sure. But I think it's you mentioned something else that I think a lot of people can learn from. So you mentioned the people on the floor and the fact that it's so important because you're able to have the conversation with the consumer that's there. And it's not a matter of, so the problem with the challenge that we have with digital, and there's a solution, don't worry, I'll give you the solution as well. But the challenge is that brands assume that you're going to put things online and you're going to A/B split test this dress versus that dress versus this top versus that top. But the reality is, if you do that, you would have never gotten the result that you got, because you had to have that conversation to understand that they wanted something completely different than your A or B test. And I think the solution there, and we've seen this quite often be effective, is the chat and customer service functionality on these sites. And the challenge is so many organizations feel like chat is something to help somebody resolve a problem. Whereas if you can actively have real people behind that chat, communicating with them, understanding what they're looking for, getting merchandising input. I mean, it's not the same obviously experience as talking to somebody on the floor, but ultimately how much closer can you get than that?
So let me tell you a story on this. This is so exciting that you say that, because we just launched 4 weeks ago, a technology called Hero. I don't know if you've heard of them. So Hero's technology is connecting the online customer to the floor,
Yep.
to the floor. It's unbelievable. And so far in 4 weeks, these conversations on the floor have had a 14% conversion rate.
Wow.
Imagine, what conversion rates do we aim for online?
Wow.
And it's so cool because I've seen it with my eyes. I've seen the guys on the shop floor. Now there's 10 of them that are trained. Obviously, you really need to take that kind of training. How do you clientele? How do you
Totally.
serve it? How do you talk about it? But really, it's such an easy tool. And that's what I love about digital transformation. When people talk about it, what are we trying to do? We're trying to empower our people with tools to make the experience of the customers easier, but also to give them the possibility to work better, to be more agile in servicing the customer. So nothing has changed. It's still the same salesperson. They're still having a human interaction, but here they're doing it with digital. So
that's incredible.
Yeah,
and I think that for so many years we've been hearing that either retail is dead, retail needs to evolve, retail needs to change, this, that, the other, and it's pretty prevalent now and obvious to everybody that with what's occurred over the last few months, it's accelerated innovation and it's accelerated the necessity for innovation. And so now we're kind of able to see some of what is coming on the other side of all of this. But what's interesting, and you're talking about the 900 days, so let's go back maybe 1,000 days and talk about why you decided at Chalhoub Group to engage in a 900-day mission and everything around that. I think it's incredible to hear.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I'll simplify it. I can go on to say that the group became a very big group, very bureaucratic, because we grew, to a certain extent, which is the problem of most very big organizations, and we wanted to be more agile in all the words that you hear in all these consulting, documents.
Workshops.
But really, what was the instigator was the customer. What we've realized, and that's very interesting conversations that I always have with our brilliant CEO Patrick Chalhoub, is that she had shifted way before we decided to shift. She started being online. She started being a lot more active. She started shopping online, and we weren't ready to service her online. She started checking everything before coming to the store, and she started shopping on our couch in our store on other platforms because she checked the price and the service or the color that we didn't have.
Yeah.
And so the world all of a sudden became so global because of online. And it's no longer that world of, let's say, 2005, if I want to put it in my head at that time, where if you had an exclusivity, you had an exclusivity, and the customer had to come to the store, and no matter what, if she wanted that product, then she had to buy it there. But at that point, it was just so global. And I remember, our CEO wearing a T-shirt that was digital or die, which was kind of true at the time. If we didn't start understanding the fact that we needed to have the full ecosystem, we would have actually died. So, and something, I'm sure you've heard many people say, and I'm not sure who said it first, but the fact that it's not retail that's dead, it's just boring retail that's dead. And really, and that's what's happening now more than ever. Another thing that McKinsey said recently, and I've used this a couple of times that I love, is the analogy of how COVID is hitting mostly, humans with underlying health issues. The same thing is happening to organizations and brands that had underlying health issues. And they quickly were not able to survive. Again, none of us know how many of us are going to survive this, but I'm saying in a way where you needed to have a certain foundation during these times to innovate and to move your resources to different platforms.
And what were some of the things that you intended? Well, first of all, I think it's great for people to hear why 900 days? Why not 3 months? Why not 6 months? Why not whatever? So,
like many organizations, we always work on 3-year plans. And tell me today if any of these plans ever, I mean, honestly, everybody was working on 3-year plans, 1-year plans. We never looked at things in shorter sprints. Again, I think many of us were always very inspired by the speed and the innovation that we've seen coming out of Silicon Valley. We've all read such unbelievable books at the time about the startup way and how do people really, move quickly. At that time, we said, you know what, we're going to move from the 3-year plan. We're going to move to what we're calling, our 90-day sprints. And in 10 sprints, we're going to get there. That was the whole idea behind the 900 days. And we formed a team, and we formed a mission, and we formed a movement that we called Shift. And every 90 days, we communicated a lot within the organization about what was done and what's next to be done. And it was always easier to make these sprints than to think about a 1 year, a 2 year. And this is where really the 900 days came from.
That's fantastic. I think that it's really great to be able to take something, any initiative, and break it out into its individual parts, and go through those sprints. And it's the same thing we do from an engineering standpoint. You have sprints, to your point, it's the Silicon Valley Scrum methodology of going through and doing your sprints and your stand-ups and whatnot.
Exactly.
And oftentimes you see that organizations can't adapt to it or won't adapt to it, but I think it's because A, they don't understand it well, and B, they're not even implementing it correctly.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about change management. And so there's one thing to go through and say, this is what we're going to change. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to integrate omni-channel, all of these amazing technologies that you're integrating. How do you then apply that to your team? And how do you get them to buy in? And how do you get them to understand that this is beneficial ultimately to the customer, which is beneficial to them, and that they're growing and evolving through this process as well?
How do you do it? To tell you, when we started, honestly, we didn't know where to start. We just started. What we knew is what we were trying, the experience that we were trying to offer to the customers. The fact that we understood that we needed to become hybrid. The fact that we valued very much still the human interaction and the brick and mortar business. And what we clearly wanted to do, which was a vision that we stuck to until today, was to combine, online with brick and mortar. And that's what we called hybrid at the time. Another thing that we knew is that we really wanted to deprocess, and we wanted to create a lot more innovation and entrepreneurship within the organization, because we have brilliant people. And that, the organization that we had built became very heavy on top, not from a management point of view, but from a support team point of view, which created a lot of centralization and which blocked innovation. One of the initiatives that we took at the time was creating our own accelerator and incubator that we call the Chalhoub Greenhouse. And the ambition with that was connecting our traditional business with startups that had a solution for some of our pain points. But also at the heart of it was that ambition for the cultural osmosis that can come from teams that work with completely different cultures and completely different mindsets. And we didn't focus this accelerator for only startups in the region. It was actually international ones. And what came out of it was really exceptional. It was this movement of innovation that we started seeing within the group. And then what tends to happen is you find teams start competing with others to innovate quicker or to find a solution quicker. We did start originally by doing a little bit of that boot camp with many of our teams, because we have 250 brands under the Chalhoub group. And they work in brands and in teams of brands, where we challenge the teams to rethink their customer journey and to really say, you know what, let's reverse engineer. Where are you trying to go, and what do you have? Do you have the teams? Do you have the skills? Do you have the tools? Do you have so? That took a very long time. That took at least the first 300 days to get that whole customer journey understanding and methodology put in place in order for us to really establish what they wanted, what each team really wanted to achieve. So from a mindset point of view, it's a very long process. If there was anything at the beginning that if I look back and I think about, we came out of it at the beginning with a very disruptive attitude or a disruptive mindset. Sure. And that's something that I don't think works everywhere. And if I look back, that was not right. And transformation does not have to be disruptive.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's Fantastic. Talk to me a little bit about process. You
Right.
mentioned deprocessing.
Yes.
And I think in all organizations, there is a balance. We realize it internally. Other companies we talk to, either they have too much process and it's bloat, or they don't have enough process in the right place. How can we think through process so that it benefits, it creates efficiencies? And at what point do we overthink it? And how do we kind of pull back? How did you do it?
I'll tell you how we did it. I don't know if it's the right way or the wrong way, but I think what I liked by the way that we went about it, we called this exercise the Freedom of Execution Project. And what we did is we took most of the processes that we had and we took from it a starting point being the entrepreneur, the intrapreneur, so our leaders, right? And we said, okay, so let's say in IT, okay, or let's say when it comes to technology, where are the areas that you must stay within the confinement of the company, you know, where you should not go out of it? Where are the ones where we advise you to consult, but then you're free to go where and do whatever you want? And where are the areas where you're completely free, you know, to execute, to find startups for it, to do whatever you want? And that exercise challenged both. Challenged the, you know, the support teams, if you want, or the corporate organization to kind of let go, which, you know, gave room to innovation and gave room to independence and entrepreneurship. And we also challenge the entrepreneurs to think entrepreneurial in the sense that you can't just at that point work in a way where if the service is not what your customer wants, that you blame
Sure.
the service and you don't take accountability. So without going, there is in processes a very important, the accountability is extremely important on how you plan it in your governance. And once that's clear, then there's freedom of execution, right? Who's accountable for what was not
Absolutely.
clear for us in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what a lot of people can learn from in organizations is that upfront time, right? That upfront time of planning, setting up the accountability, setting up the governance, as you mentioned,
Absolutely.
so that you can then allow people to be free. I noticed back in the day when I started, I was micromanaging everybody for the first 10 years. And there's some people that I realized that I wasn't micromanaging. And I realized it was because I was confident in what they did, or I didn't know what they did at all. And so I allowed them to do it because I had no input. And then eventually realized that it was really, as they built their teams, I noticed in terms of our organization, leaders that would micromanage and ones that didn't. And I realized the ones that didn't, it's not because of their necessarily personality, it's because they spent an ample amount of time setting things up, setting up exactly, and then saying exactly as you put it, these are the areas where this is how it's done. If you want to provide input, provide input. But for now, this is how it's done, and this is where you can play, and this is where you can go out and do it. And I think the point of bringing external factors into your organization, the startups through the Chalhoub greenhouse, that's a really interesting point as well, because it allows them to feel like they're doing something that's different and fun.
Yes.
And so it's no longer a matter of, oh, I have to change the way I work and I have to do this and I have to do that. But it's a mindset, right? Like when you talk about entrepreneurs, I think too often people think the word entrepreneur and they think you have to go start a business. But they don't understand that what many of us refer to as entrepreneurs are people that are self-starters, people that take ownership. And when you think of the concept of ownership, exactly, and you take initiative and you own something, you care about it. You care about it, you want it to grow, you don't want it to stay the way it is, and you put an enormous amount of your heart and effort into it. And it's those things that are really entrepreneur attributes, if you will. This is fascinating. Talk to us a little bit about, so when did Shift end? Has your Shift ended recently, right?
It hasn't yet. Actually, June 18th is
We're almost
the end
there.
of the 900 days.
Congratulations.
However, we're extending till the end of the year, the Shift initiative. But next Thursday.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Talk to us a little bit about retail. So you mentioned it's not retail that's dying, it's boring retail that's dying. So when individuals are starting brands right now, right? And last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there is this push for direct to consumer. It makes sense. You sell online, you don't have to have the footprint, you have different margins, you spend that margin on customer acquisition, so on and so forth. But inevitably, most of the brands that we know that grow to a certain point online, they like to have that retail expansion as well, be it because they want to have, as you mentioned earlier, that physical human connectivity with their consumers. They want to hear from them. They want to be able to walk into a store and have it. How does retail need to shift to be able to keep what is great about that human element, but also make it so that that commoditized purchase that people aren't going into the store for anymore is gone? Like, where's retail going basically? And where does it fit within the entire ecosystem?
I mean, if I had that answer, I think I'd be nowadays I would be a very, very rich woman. I'll tell you from my point of view, and that's something that we've asked ourselves a lot. And what I know today is very different than what I knew 4 years ago. I remember 4 years ago for Level Shoes, when we were starting our .com, I used to go around the marketing team, because at the time .com was marketing, and you know, which is not the case at all today. It's very commerce. And I used to say, I want to reflect the exact experience we have in store online. And I used to go crazy because I never used to see that. And it used to drive me crazy. Today, I tell you that that's impossible, that each single channel has its own unique selling point. Basically, it has its own unique USP, and they have to live together. I'm a huge believer that online without offline doesn't work, and offline without online doesn't work. Online today, you cannot compete, okay, with online's price, proximity, and convenience, okay? And online, you cannot compete with the offline if the offline is done well, which is, in my views, the experience, the dwell time. You don't want people to shop quickly in your store.
Sure.
You want them to be there, to enjoy, to take their time, to have that leisure. You don't want people that walk into your store that don't take pictures. Do you remember the time in retail where you weren't allowed to take pictures in store?
Absolutely.
You want people to be sharing, to be sharing with their community their experience. And you don't want your salespeople to be selling, because that can be done online.
Sure.
You know, so you really don't want them. So I know it's very cliche to say storytelling, but for me, it's at the heart of everything. I remember we were working on our group purpose recently. And, you know, one of the things that kept on taking me back and back and back into why do I love luxury, or why do I love, you know, my experiences in retail? And every single piece that I value, I was able to put it to the exact time and moment that I bought it. And I even remember the stairway of a store, or the smell of what, and the salesperson. And I have so much stories behind it. If you can't tell a story behind something, and especially if it's a valuable item, then you know, I'm not sure that you've done it right with retail.
Sure. And I think you're spot on that. And I agree with you that there's a place for each of these experiences and channels. Even Facebook Shop and Instagram Shop, that are basically just a catalog listing currently, there's a place for them. Yes, it's not the same sort of storytelling and whatnot, but it's more of like a transaction. You see something, you want to buy it, you leave. I think in terms of retail, the luxury retailers have historically done the best job of this, because you walk in to a lifestyle. Immediately you walk in, whether it's the music, whether it's the glass of champagne they bring you, it's the couch, it's the fitting room, everything. But then I think where there's been a lack of that, or a challenge, are retailers that don't have an identity, or their identity is transactional.
True.
And so that is getting replaced, as you mentioned, with this online, with price, proximity, etc. But I think that the key is going to be figuring out what they do, right? Because there's going to be a ton of retail space still available, and there are various types of concepts and whatnot, whether it's just a showroom, whether multiple brands are in one environment together. But I think people want that experience. And when they walk into a space, they want to feel a certain way. So you walk into Zara, you hear the music that's playing in there, whatever you're shopping for. If you're shopping for a vacation, you have that in mind. If you're shopping for this, you have that in mind. And part of the challenge is then you leave that experience and it's gone. And I think with, again, the digital retail integration needs to extend outside of the store. So you should be able to walk into a Zara, listen to the music, walk out, and have that music appear for you. I think we're having some technical issues on Rania's end. We'll give her a second. Dustin, you got me okay? So while we're waiting for Rania to come back, what I was getting at is that there's a place for all of these channels, and specifically around retail. I know we've talked about it ad nauseum. Everybody's talked about retail and what is retail going to do, but retail needs to lean more into digital and bring in those components of digital that people want. Again, as I was mentioning, is you walk into a store, you hear some music, you should be able to leave there and take that music with you, take that lifestyle, take that essence with you. And then it's about the integration between the two. How do you go from the experience in the store and the experience at home and understand that it's one brand and one lifestyle and one component, and integrate those two? Perfect. We got you back, Rania.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah, I was just talking about being able to take that retail feeling with you when you leave the store.
I think, I mean, I'm a big social media lover, and I love Instagram for our industry. And I think there's a lot more coming, obviously, with TikTok and and Snapchat for us, and some places in the region does greatly with it. And I think the storytelling element, the ability to work with, again, we are an industry that's extremely visual. Okay, we're an industry that has always been very visual. We love art, we love music, we love all of these assets. If we can translate that through the ecosystem, I'm going to say, that our community lives in. And that's what I love about not just social media, but the idea of going into where the community is. So you don't need to only ask them to come to you, because retail can be pop-ups here and there, could be collaborations, could be partnerships. And that I've seen done so well, recently in the past couple of years. And it's been really interesting. And I think for a brand to really know with who and what to associate itself with is very important in telling that, that connection really gets you to either open up your community or get into a new world. So you're right, when it comes to online alone, it's a little bit, sometimes dry from a sense of how can you experience that. But you can always experience it through the way that you're sending your shipments, and I love people, for instance, that send a shipment with a dash of that smell of the store.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and you open it and you're like, okay, this smell reminds me of something, or a picture or something that, that comes to life.
It's so interesting that so much of, so many techniques, methods, etc., just recycle themselves. You would go into a store 10 years ago, you wanted to buy some makeup, perfume, cologne, and they would give you samples. And what a novel concept. And people love the samples. I love those samples. Now we call it surprise and delight. You basically send a shipment and there's something else in there that you weren't expecting. But it's the same thing that's been done before. And it's a matter of, again, back to everything we've been talking about. It's about that consumer and understanding what makes them happy and makes them happy to receive what you have. You buy something, it's not just a matter of receiving this and wearing it. It's what else did it come with? What feeling did I have? Where did it go? And I think the other point, you mentioned pop-up, and an idea, a conversation I was having yesterday just came to mind, again, around Facebook shops and whatnot. It's really interesting. Many brands are thinking, okay, how do I use this whole Facebook shop catalog thing versus something else? And the reality is that it's a matter of being where the consumer is.
Right.
And so think about it like you're on in Venice, or you're in LA or New York or whatnot. And that Facebook catalog is basically like a pop-up that just where they are, it pops up, gives them the ability to see those products and purchase them if they want. And then you get to your main site and you're able to expand on your storytelling and do more. And then ultimately the most impact you can have is that human connection and retail. So I think it's just layers of storytelling, as you mentioned. And as long as that consistency occurs end to end, you're able to kind of achieve what it is that your brand is set out for. Rania, talk to us a little bit about what our viewers can learn from your experience between the Zaras of the world, Ralph Lauren, Level Shoes. What they're all kind of at different ends of the spectrum, from fast fashion to a historical retail brand in Ralph Lauren to basically luxury as well as massive merchandising as it comes to Level Shoes and that retail experience. What can they learn from each of those organizations?
I mean, again, I go back if I was to answer this, is really learning who our archetypes are, who's our customer. And for each customer, really design the experience that you think you'll be able to connect, that will be able to delight them. Even though fast fashion, and if you look at it today, it's less expensive than others. It has less service if you want in the store. I don't know if you've read yesterday, but right now they're only focusing on very large stores because they also understand that they have to create also that momentum. It has to feel like you're going, to enjoy something. But they always got it right, especially Inditex, when it came to visual merchandising, when it came to music, and when it came to the way that they were recruiting their teams, etc. So it is across all of the experiences that I've had, I always felt that I was entering a set whenever I worked on the shop floor.
That's
you
amazing.
go in there, you and your team are like you're in a theater. You are creating, you're orchestrated in a way to make sure the product is there, that it looks the best, that when people are coming, you're playing that role, as genuinely and as authentically as you can. But you're playing a role there because at the end of the day, you're welcoming your guests into these stores. And that goes from, the unbelievable. I mean, Ralph Lauren, honestly, I think is the king when it comes to lifestyle in the store. You can't be caught dead not putting flowers that were fresh in that store. You need to be sure that you have the right candles that are lit and the right music and the right uniforms. But that also extends beyond retail because, close friends of mine that are in FMB, restaurants today, and I asked, I heard the story through a friend actually that had interviewed one of the restaurateurs, and he said that in his recruitment he called it casting, and that he actually put up on a screen all the different people, made sure that he had a beautifully diverse cast from a diversity point of view, but character point of view as well, and that they had so much character that it was part of the experience for you, obviously, other than the setup and the music and everything, but people play a big role. So for me, honestly, it was just the product that changed, but I think throughout the experience, it was always about the theater of retail.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we see so many brands out there that do well for a little bit of time, then they're gone, or they sell a commoditized product and people say, man, how did they sell that bottle of water and sell it for so much and sell the company for so much and whatnot? And if you really dig in, it doesn't matter if you have a commoditized product, if you have a unique product, if you have anything, that connection with the customer through storytelling is what is ultimately going to allow you to retain that customer and to build that relationship. And that is why they come back and buy from you, whether they're buying online, they're buying in store, etc. There's a feeling, there's an emotion. So yeah, I'm completely agree with you.
And you know what, on what you're talking about right now, Zubin, in regards to retention, which has been a very big focus for us recently. Because obviously, more than anyone, online, if you're not focusing on that, you're just throwing money down the drain.
Absolutely.
And the same exact focused retention that you do in traditional retail, you have to do for online. And the fact that we today have tools and platforms to be able to clearly tell us who's left us online,
Exactly.
and how long it's been that they haven't been here, and through a click of a button, it could be a phone call, an email, a package, that tell them, you know what, we're still here, do you want to come back, how can we talk? And the end solution to all of this is human interaction, either if it's online or if it's offline. Somebody
Sure.
has to call and speak with somebody, and that's
No,
important.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And the concept of retention is a very interesting one. I know that Gary often talks about the fact that you need to be patient and things take a while and whatnot. That applies across the board. What ended up happening in the 2000s is a lot of brands, because they were first to market, they were able to run Facebook ads, Google ads, etc., and focus only on the return on ad spend and get that initial customer. Then they grow to a certain point. The market's now more saturated with competition because Facebook and Shopify and all these just make it easy to sell products online. And then now everybody's thinking, oh shit, how do I actually retain these customers? And who are my customers that I want to retain? So we're completely aligned on that, Rania. Our focus when we work with our clients and our brands is to start with retention and to say, okay, let's not just go after low-hanging fruit customers that are only going to buy from you once. Let's actually invest in a long-term plan. And I'm not talking about long-term as in like years. We're talking about, instead of looking at it month to month, let's look at it over 90 days, over 120 days, and find those customers that are authentically interested in your brand, that want to stay with you, and that ultimately help you build a sustainable business. Rania, this has been very lovely. I would love you to leave us with one final nugget of wisdom, please.
Wow. I mean, at the end of the day, I remember as a young girl going into stores and being just completely enamored with the idea of working in one. And I think we owe it today as retailers and as brands to make sure that we leave that in every customer that walks in. And this is really what it is. It's about that dream of, wanting to be part of your brand or wanting to be part of your community. And if you don't build it that way, I don't think that you're going to leave your stamp, in this market or on your customers. And I think that's really my last message.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. We'll have to do this again. Rania Masri, Chief Transformation Officer, Chalhoub Group. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please follow us, and looking forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.